Black CEO gets denied service at his own bank. The manager gets fired on the spot. Welcome, dear viewers, to a story that will take you on an emotional roller coaster, pulling you into a world of wealth, ambition, injustice, and poetic retribution. It follows a highly accomplished CEO dynamic in vision, generous in spirit, and unrelenting in his pursuit of success, who is turned away from the very establishment he helped build. At first glance, this may seem like a tale of discrimination, but in truth, it's far more than that. It's a suspenseful journey into hidden corporate politics, personal vendettas, and dangerous secrets lurking behind polished marble walls. When you think you've figured it out, the path will twist again, revealing cunning conspiracies and unrelenting determination. With each paragraph, you'll discover new revelations, tension-packed showdowns, and ultimate justice served exactly when and how it's deserved. Prepare to immerse yourself in a dramatic saga that proves power and perseverance can arise from the most unexpected of setbacks. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. Leonard Whitfield's usual mornings began at 5 o'clock sharp in his Upper Manhattan penthouse overlooking Central Park. A consistent routine anchored him a quick 10-minute meditation session on his balcony, followed by a protein shake, some light cardio on his Peloton bike, and a quick skim of the Wall Street Journal. Leonard was the CEO of Primefort Financial, a relatively new banking institution he had founded several years ago with a mission of cutting-edge financial solutions and transparent service. At 42, he was a charismatic Black entrepreneur who had overcome countless hardships to build something he firmly believed in. On this particular morning, he brewed a cup of Starbucks Sumatra dark roast instead of his usual green tea, a subtle break from routine that felt like an omen for the day to come. Perhaps it was the unsettled feeling in the air, or the passing dream he couldn't quite recall. As he stood in his kitchen, swirling the coffee around in its porcelain mug, an unshakable sense of apprehension tugged at him. Despite the subtle warnings prickling at the back of his mind, he exhaled deeply, reminding himself that he'd navigated countless storms before. Life as a Black CEO in the high-stakes finance world had never been smooth. He had fought for every inch of ground he stood on, from the initial seed funding that often escaped entrepreneurs of color to forging alliances with individuals who doubted him at every turn. Yet here he was, the head of one of the fastest rising financial institutions in New York, some even said in the entire country. Little did Leonard know that the small pit in his stomach was more than just early morning jitters. Dark clouds loomed on the horizon, and the events of this day would eclipse every trial he had ever faced before. In a few short hours, he would find himself in a surreal confrontation that threatened to unravel all he had worked for a confrontation in the very heart of his own establishment. Just as Leonard was about to slip on his tailored navy blue Tom Ford suit, his phone rang. Caller ID revealed the name Darren Hayes. Darren was Leonard's right-hand man and the CFO of Primefort Financial. They had been friends since their Harvard Business School days, forging a bond over late-night study sessions, shared ambitions, and big dreams. However, Darren rarely called this early, unless something urgent had happened. "Leonard," Darren said, voice taut with anxiety, "I just got off a call with an internal auditor from the Fulton Street branch. He's reporting some irregularities. I'm on my way to the bank now." Leonard paused. Ty half nodded. "Irregularities? As in missing funds or suspicious transactions?" "Possibly both," Darren replied gravely. "I don't have full details yet, but the auditor mentioned large sums that can't be accounted for. Transactions approved by a manager who never sought upper-level authorization. We're talking hundreds of thousands, maybe more." Leonard tightened his tie. The thought of corruption or theft within Primefort left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had built this bank on principles of trust and equity, determined to run things differently from the old guard financial institutions that had historically marginalized minority entrepreneurs. "I'm on my way," he said, Have the internal auditor compile all documentation and meet me in the branch manager's office. It was not the typical crisis a banking CEO wanted to hear about first thing in the morning, but Leonard tried to stay composed as he strode out of his penthouse, stepping into his Tesla Model S. The day had only just begun, yet the weight of it already pressed down on him like a boulder. Upon arriving at the Fulton Street branch, Leonard couldn't help but notice the stiff, formal atmosphere. Tellers eyed him with curiosity and caution, some whispering behind their counters. He was not in disguise or anything, however. He had intentionally kept a relatively low profile over the past year, focusing more on big-picture strategies than on constant branch visits. While many employees recognized him, there were some new hires who may not have. Darren Hayes was there to greet him, standing near the main reception desk. His brow gleamed with a thin layer of perspiration. "I've got the auditor in a side conference room. The manager is, well, she's refusing to let him have certain documents. Says he needs higher approval." Leonard nodded, aware that compliance procedures could get complicated. But given that the bank's internal auditing department reported directly to the executive suite, the manager's refusal made little sense. "Where is this manager now?" Darren gestured discreetly to a woman with impeccably styled hair, perched in her glass-walled office. She wore a crisp Ralph Lauren blazer over a sharp blouse. Her posture screamed authority, even from a distance. Her name's Mary Donovan. She transferred from a competing bank 6 months ago. Leonard studied Mary through the glass. She exuded the polished, no-nonsense aura of an old-school corporate climber. As Leonard moved closer, he could sense the tension among the staff. Several employees seemed anxious, their gazes darting between him and Mary's office. What none of them realized was that a confrontation was brewing. Leonard fully intended to discover the source of the suspicious transactions, but Mary Donovan had secrets of her own and wouldn't relinquish them easily. Already, the day was shaping up to be a clash of wills, one that would set the stage for an even bigger upheaval than anyone could imagine. Leonard strode purposefully toward Mary's office, but before he could even reach the door, she emerged, blocking his path. Her expression was cold and distant. "Good morning," Leonard began, extending a hand. She cut him off abruptly, her tone sharp. "I know who you are. We're quite busy today, Mr." She glanced at his suit jacket, as if expecting a name badge. Evidently, she didn't recognize him as the CEO, or perhaps she simply chose not to. Leonard's eyebrow twitched. "I'm Leonard Whitfield. May I have a moment of your time regarding the auditor's request?" Mary folded her arms. "Are you with the auditing team? Because if so, I already informed them that any sensitive documents need to go through me. You should speak with my assistant, Claire, to schedule a proper meeting." There was a stifling hush in the immediate vicinity. A nearby teller paused mid-transaction, and Darren visibly tensed, anticipating an altercation. Leonard took a calm breath. "Miss Donovan, I think it would be best if we stepped into your office to talk privately." Instead of moving aside, Mary glowered. "Let me be very clear. The auditor you sent has no authority to rifle through bank records, especially not under questionable pretenses. I suspect you're just here to pry into things you have no business involving yourself in. As far as I'm concerned, you're trespassing." The direct hostility in her voice was jarring. Darren tried to intervene, but Leonard raised a hand to stop him. He looked Mary in the eye. "Trust me, Miss Donovan, I have every right and the highest clearance to review those documents." Even now, Mary didn't back down. In a lower, more venomous tone, she said, "Until you can prove that, I don't owe you a thing." Darren's eyes flickered with alarm. He knew Leonard's temperament calm but unyielding when pushed. The tension in the air crackled, and the entire bank floor seemed to hold its breath. No one expected the branch manager to be so brazen in front of the man who founded Primefort Financial. Little did they know, the storm was just beginning to gather. Undeterred by Mary's hostility, Leonard bypassed her blockade and walked into her office, motioning for Darren and the internal auditor, Nathan Reyes, to join him. Mary hesitated, anger flashing across her features, but eventually followed, perhaps more intrigued than she cared to admit. Nathan, a middle-aged man with an earnest face and wire-rimmed glasses, carried a thick folder of documents, as well as a laptop. He set everything down on Mary's sleek mahogany desk, glancing from Leonard to Mary nervously. Leonard offered Nathan a reassuring nod. Please show me the irregularities. With trembling hands, Nathan opened the folder to reveal a list of high-value transactions, each with a suspicious signature at the bottom. These transactions were all approved in the last 3 months, Nathan explained, voice unsteady. They were processed under a special account classification that typically requires authorization from the corporate office. But according to the records, the signature belongs to Miss Donovan. Mary's eyes widened, though she tried to hide it with a sneer. That's impossible. I've never authorized these. You're forging my signature to cover your tracks. She glared at Nathan accusingly. Leonard skimmed the pages. Amounts ranged from $50,000 up to $300,000, all funneling to a series of offshore accounts in small increments. The pattern looked deliberate, carefully hidden but substantial. Miss Donovan, he said quietly, these appear to be legitimate transactions authorized under your login credentials. That's a lie, Mary snapped. I don't care who you think you are. I am the manager of this branch, and I have never even once approved anything like this, Darren interjected. Our system requires biometric authentication. These transactions show your fingerprint scan was used. It would be nearly impossible for someone else to replicate that unless they had your direct cooperation. The color drained from Mary's face for a split second, only to return as a furious flush. How dare you accuse me of this? You people walk in here thinking you can bully me, but I know how the corporate world works. She turned on Leonard, her posture defiant. And I especially know how men like you operate, manipulating data, faking signatures, anything to scapegoat a branch manager and protect your precious bottom line. The audible gasp from Nathan mirrored the tension in the room. Mary was digging herself deeper with every syllable. Yet, the sharper her words, the more Leonard sensed something else fear. He could see it dancing behind her eyes, fueling her fury. Still, the question remained. Was Mary Donovan truly behind this elaborate scheme, or was she covering for someone else entirely? The conversation reached a boiling point. Just as Leonard prepared to address Mary's accusations, she held up a hand. I won't continue this farce. If you persist in harassing me about fraudulent documents you clearly planted, I will have security remove you and your so-called associates. Before Leonard could speak, Mary marched to her office door and waved at a security guard stationed near the lobby. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man, wearing a Navy uniform with a Primefort security badge on his chest. She pointed at Leonard and Darren. These men are trespassing and harassing me. Escort them off the premises. Now. The guard hesitated, looking from Mary to the 2 men in suits. Though new on the job, he recognized Darren Hayes from previous visits and seemed confused by Mary's instructions. Ma'am, are you sure they shouldn't be here? Mary's eyes flashed. Are you questioning me? I said they're not welcome. Get them out, or you're fired. The guard stiffened, stepping forward. Darren tensed, but Leonard placed a hand on his friend's shoulder, signaling him to remain calm. Leonard turned to Mary, his voice steady but firm. Miss Donovan, you're making a mistake. I am the CEO of Primefort Financial. I founded this institution, and I have every right to be here. For a moment, Mary appeared rattled. Then, as though doubling down on her own disbelief, she spat, I don't care if you're the President of the United States. You're not welcome here. Word began to spread through the bank like wildfire. Employees at their desks stood in shock. Customers whispered among themselves. The security guard, caught in a paralyzing indecision, stared at Mary and then back at Leonard. Finally, the guard concluded he had to follow orders from the branch manager, as he lacked any direct instruction from corporate about the identities of senior management. Leonard's frustration was apparent, but he maintained composure. If Mary truly did not know who he was, this was a critical sign of a breakdown in corporate communication, or of something more sinister. Reluctantly, Leonard and Darren allowed the guard to escort them out of the building. The moment they passed through the sleek glass doors, a crowd of onlookers, customers, and employees alike gathered at the entrance, stunned by the spectacle. Leonard's mind churned as he stepped onto the sidewalk. In the swirl of confusion, he recalled the opening lines of the day's newspaper. Unprecedented times call for unprecedented measures. He felt the words ring true in a way he hadn't anticipated. He would get to the bottom of this fiasco, even if he had to tear down walls within his own organization. For now, however, he had been denied service at his own bank. Once outside, Darren tried to gather his breath, his anger coloring his voice. Can you believe her? She's shutting down the auditor's access and acting like you have no authority here. Leonard steadied him with a hand on his shoulder. We'll handle this smartly. Let's regroup at the corporate office. I want to know how she got hired, who recommended her, and why nobody briefed her on senior leadership. This smells fishy. They jumped into Leonard's Tesla, heading straight to Primefort's Midtown corporate headquarters. Over the course of the drive, Darren worked his phone, calling various department heads to relay what had transpired. Shock and disbelief rippled through the executive chain. Some staff members knew of Mary Donovan by reputation. She had an extensive background in banking, a fiercely competitive personality, and impeccable credentials. None had ever reported suspicious behavior until now. Meanwhile, Leonard called the head of HR, Maria Bennett, instructing her to gather Mary Donovan's complete personnel file, along with any recommendation letters or references. He also wanted a thorough check of her digital footprints, emails, system logins, transaction logs. Bring in it, he told Maria. The first need the best forensic guys on this. By the time they arrived at the corporate office, a small group of top executives had assembled in the boardroom. Monitors glowed, spreadsheets and transaction histories displayed in real time. Nathan Reyes, the internal auditor, was also there, having arrived via back entrance to avoid confrontation with Mary Donovan. He looked shaken but resolute, determined to see this through. Darren began the meeting with a recap of the events at the Fulton Street branch. Gasps and murmurs erupted around the table as he recounted how Leonard had been physically escorted out by security in Mary Donovan's command. Then, Maria Bennett presented Mary's file. As she read from it, an unsettling pattern of anomalies began to emerge. Entries were missing or incomplete, references came from suspicious sources, and even her original resume looked partially fabricated. The deeper they dug, the more questions arose. Who was Mary Donovan, really? And how had she slipped into a position of power at Primefort? Leonard glanced around the room. We need to be sure whether Mary Donovan is acting alone, or if there's a network behind her. The scale of these transfers suggests multiple accomplices. Let's not forget, the transactions are too large to be a one-person job. A shared tension filled the boardroom, but with it came a fierce resolve. Leonard saw his leadership team united by a singular purpose to protect Primefort from any corruption. Nobody realized that this crisis was about to unfold into a series of twists and betrayals beyond anyone's imagination. As the team hunkered down in the boardroom, Leonard's phone buzzed. He checked it, expecting an update or a supportive message from a trusted ally. Instead, a block number had sent a single text. Back off, if you know what's good for you. His stomach clenched. He glanced up to see Darren watching him, silently asking if everything was all right. Leonard simply slipped the phone back into his pocket, not wanting to alarm the entire group just yet. He wasn't certain if the threat was connected to Mary Donovan, but the timing was too precise to be a coincidence. Continuing the meeting, its specialists displayed transaction timelines on the conference room's large screens. Each suspicious deposit was highlighted in red, each withdrawal in green. Pinpointing their destinations would require cooperation from international law enforcement, at least if they were to dig deep into the offshore accounts. The complexity alone hinted at a sophisticated scheme, one that had likely been running for months, if not longer. Maria Bennett pointed to a chain of email correspondence between Mary Donovan and an unknown contact. We discovered this hidden in her draft folder. She never sent it, possibly planning to keep the information stored as a draft to avoid detection. It references an entity named Kingfisher Investments overseas. We're trying to track them now. Leonard leaned forward, his face tight. Kingfisher Investments? We need to figure out if that's a shell company. This is bigger than just one corrupt manager. Before the conversation could progress further, Leonard's phone vibrated again. Another text from a blocked number. This is your final warning. His heart pounded, a mix of anger and apprehension. If someone was brazen enough to threaten him, they were either desperate or extremely confident in their power. Possibly both. Still, Leonard's resolve hardened. The intimidation might have worked on a weaker soul, but he had navigated too much adversity in his life to cave now, resolving to share the threat with the others once they had more concrete evidence. He carried on with the meeting. Yet, in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that a hidden adversary was pulling strings behind the scenes, a puppeteer controlling Mary Donovan, and maybe even others within Primefort. With the stakes climbing, Leonard decided on a bold move. He asked Darren and Maria to come up with a strategy to gain access to the Fulton Street branch unnoticed. "We can't just barge in as ourselves," Leonard said. "Mary will have the security guard on us in seconds. We needed an inside approach." Darren's eyes flickered with excitement. "You're thinking undercover? Disguises and infiltration?" Leonard nodded slowly. "It's unconventional, but time is critical. If Mary Donovan and her associates realize we're on to them, they could wipe the digital evidence or shift funds elsewhere. We need to catch them off guard. If I can get inside to review the system logs directly, especially at the manager's terminal, I might find a data trail that Mary can't deny. Then we have her cornered." Maria tapped her pen thoughtfully. "We have a few employees at Fulton Street whom we trust implicitly. One of them might help you navigate unnoticed for a short period. Let me reach out quietly. But you'll still need a good cover story to avoid detection by staff you don't know." Darren volunteered to orchestrate some kind of diversion at the front of the bank, while Leonard slipped in from a side entrance. The plan was risky. If caught, it could escalate tensions, yet no other solution seemed feasible under the circumstances. As they began fleshing out the details, phony IDs, strategic timing, safe words to text if anything went wrong, the mood in the room oscillated between nervousness and daring determination. Everyone involved recognized this was no trivial matter. A top executive infiltrating his own bank in disguise was borderline unthinkable. But the alternative was letting a criminal operation continue unchecked and allowing a manager to run the bank like her personal fiefdom. Leonard stood up, concluding the meeting. "Let's make sure we proceed carefully. The moment we have Mary Donovan in a position where she can't weasel out, we bring in legal and the authorities. Until then, not a whisper of this leaves this room." He glanced around at the assembled team, locking eyes with each person. "We have to protect the integrity of Primefort, no matter the cost." Later that evening, Leonard returned to his penthouse with an ache in his heart. The events of the day had rattled his belief that Primefort was immune to the corruption plaguing traditional banks. He knew no system was perfect, but discovering a potential ring of embezzlers under his nose cut deep. He also couldn't shake the threatening messages. Was Mary Donovan the source, or was someone else orchestrating this from the shadows? Exhausted but unable to sleep, he pored over the digital documents Darren had sent to his personal laptop. The transaction logs told a chilling story of a systematically engineered conspiracy. At one point, a wave of discouragement washed over him. Could the infiltration plan backfire, leading to a media scandal that would tarnish Primefort's reputation? Already, the rumor mill was likely churning after the spectacle at the Fulton Street branch. If the press learned the CEO was denied service at his own bank, the story would make headlines, overshadowing everything else. Steeling himself, Leonard reminded himself of the pledge he made when he founded Primefort to be a beacon of ethical finance in a sea of opportunists. If he cowered now, he'd be betraying that promise and every customer who believed in him. He resolved that come morning, he would throw himself fully into the undercover operation, no matter the personal or professional risk. Still, as he finally drifted off to a fitful sleep, he couldn't help but wonder who or what waited for him in the labyrinth of the Fulton Street branch. And when the dust finally settled, would Primefort and Leonard himself ever be the same? Early the next morning, Leonard donned clothes that were decidedly un-CEO-like: a worn bomber jacket, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. He topped it off with a gray baseball cap pulled low to shadow his face. The transformation was startling, but that was exactly the point. Darren had organized everything down to the last detail. One of the trusted tellers at the Fulton Street branch, a young woman named Tasha Morell, would greet Leonard at the side entrance reserved for deliveries. She was fully briefed on the infiltration plan and had agreed to help motivated, in part, by her own suspicions about Mary Donovan's shady activities. Darren, meanwhile, would enter through the main doors with two other executives. posing as disgruntled customers determined to close several high-value accounts unless the manager addressed them personally. Their ruckus would draw Mary Donovan out of her office, giving Leonard time to slip into the restricted areas unobserved. At precisely 9:15 a.m., Darren sauntered into the lobby, feigning anger over unexplained fees. A few minutes later, Tasha waved from a side door, catching Leonard's eye through a narrow glass panel. He stepped inside swiftly, heart pounding at the surreal notion of sneaking into his own bank. Tasha offered a tense smile. "This way, Mr. Whitfield," she whispered, leading him through a corridor typically reserved for staff. "The manager's office is around that corner. You'll see an empty cubicle next to her door. You can access the system from the computer there, if you have the master log and credentials." He nodded, showing her the tiny USB drive in his pocket. "This has the key to override local restrictions," he said. "Once I'm in the system, I can clone the data. That should give us what we need to prove Mary's involvement." They tiptoed past a break room, hearing voices inside, bank employees laughing and chatting, oblivious to the drama unfolding steps away. Reaching the empty cubicle, Tasha motioned for Leonard to slip inside. "I'll keep watch. If anyone comes, I'll give a short cough. You hide under the desk, or act like you're fixing the router or something." Leonard managed a grateful smile. "You're taking a huge risk." "Thank you, Tasha." She lowered her gaze. "I believe in Prime Fort's mission. And I believe in you, Mr. Whitfield. I'm sure once this is over, you'll make it right." He nodded and crouched behind the desk, booting up the computer. As soon as it hummed to life, he inserted the USB key. The system recognized the override credentials, granting him admin-level access to the branch's internal network. His palms were clammy as he navigated through subfolders and hidden directories. For a moment, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Then Tasha let out a faint cough, the signal they had agreed upon. Footsteps approached from around the corner. Leonard's heart raced as he minimized the screens and ducked down, hoping the invisible intruder plan held up under scrutiny. A pair of polished black heels appeared in Leonard's peripheral vision, Mary Donovan's distinct footwear. She strutted past the cubicle, barking orders into her phone. "I don't care if it's an emergency. Tell those men in the lobby that I'll see them after I finish these important tasks. They're not the only ones with demands." Leonard held his breath, keeping perfectly still. Mary paused inches from his hiding place, glancing around as if sensing something amiss. Tasha quickly intervened, stepping forward with a stack of papers. "Miss Donovan, I have the daily deposit summaries you asked for." Mary snatched the papers without so much as a thank you. "Fine. Now go get me a latte from Starbucks across the street. A venti, extra foam. Make sure it's hot." With that, she spun on her heel and disappeared down the hallway. Leonard let out a slow exhale. Tasha gave him a discreet thumbs up and rushed off to fetch Mary's coffee. Leonard resumed his covert data extraction, scanning the logs for recent logins by Mary Donovan's credentials. His eyes widened as the screen filled with pages upon pages of transactions, some even larger than those discovered by Nathan Reyes. The frequency of transfers had ramped up in the last week, as if Mary sensed an impending crackdown and wanted to move funds quickly. Leonard silently copied everything to his USB drive, mindful of the time. When the progress bar finally reached 100%, he ejected the drive with a trembling hand. He had the proof documents that would not only implicate Mary, but potentially reveal the shadowy figure behind her. Then came the next step, installing a small piece of software that would record Mary's keystrokes. If the infiltration was discovered, at least they'd have ongoing evidence of her actions in real time, capturing any further incriminating behavior. Just as he finished, Tasha reappeared, panting slightly from her Starbucks run. "Here," she whispered, sliding him a blank ID badge. "Put this around your neck, just in case. It looks legit at a glance." Leonard clipped the badge on. Another short cough from Tasha signaled a second approach. This time, he was prepared. However, instead of Mary, a nervous junior teller emerged, rummaging for office supplies in the cubicle next to him. Leonard ducked his head and shuffled some papers, trying to appear busy. "Hey, have you seen the new toner?" the teller asked, not even glancing at him. Leonard muttered a low, "No, sorry." in a tone that hopefully obscured his voice enough. He felt sweat trickle down his neck. The teller mumbled something about incompetent deliveries and moved on. Finally, the path was clear. Leonard slipped out of the cubicle and back toward the side door, using Tasha's directions to bypass the break room. His heart thundered with adrenaline as he stepped into the crisp morning air. Once outside, he inhaled deeply. He had secured valuable evidence. And unbelievably, the plan had worked. Leonard quickly rendezvoused with Darren at a nearby cafe. Darren had extricated himself and the other executives from the bank lobby after Mary refused to address their faux complaint. Over 2 steaming mugs of black coffee, Leonard recounted the success of the infiltration. Then, carefully, he plugged the USB drive into his personal laptop. At first, they saw what they expected, a series of questionable transactions under Mary's credentials. But as Darren scrolled deeper, something even more alarming materialized: references to Project Amherst, a cryptic code used in email subject lines, always accompanied by a specific date. The amounts around those dates were significantly larger, sometimes hitting 7 figures. Each transaction was routed through Kingfisher Investments or a similar-sounding offshore front. "What is Project Amherst?" Darren asked, brow furrowed. Leonard tapped a few keys, searching for related data. "I don't know, but it seems to correlate with massive transfers, definitely bigger than standard petty embezzlement. This is orchestrated, well-funded." Digging further, they found emails from one account to Mary's corporate email, all signed with a single initial, R. Each email instructed Mary to facilitate the next deposit or withdrawal, specifying sums that dwarfed everything else in the logs. R also gave direct instructions on how to bypass certain security protocols within Primefort's system. A chill ran down Leonard's spine. Someone with intimate knowledge of the bank's structure was directing Mary Donovan, and they possessed enough leverage or resources to keep her obedient. "Who is R?" Leonard wondered aloud. A memory surfaced one of the threatening text messages. Could R be the same person behind those? Darren's face paled. If these numbers are correct, we're talking about tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars laundered through Primefort. This goes beyond a single rogue manager. This is an international money laundering scheme. Leonard's thoughts spun like a tornado. We need law enforcement involved. But first, we must be certain we have enough evidence to convince the authorities that our bank isn't complicit. We can't risk them freezing all operations without notice. Darren nodded gravely. Agreed. We also need to confirm who R is. There must be an IP address or email trace we can use. We can't let them slip away. The scale of the conspiracy jolted them both. Leonard had suspected internal theft, maybe a ring of corrupt employees. But now they faced the possibility that a powerful, unseen entity was using Primefort as a conduit for illicit funds. The question remained, how high up did this go? And how far were these criminals willing to go to protect their operation? Armed with the incriminating data, Leonard called an emergency board meeting that afternoon. Though most members trusted Leonard, he was aware that the board included influential figures who had their own private agendas. Still, the magnitude of this situation demanded their involvement. They assembled in the sleek, glass-walled boardroom on the 37th floor of Primefort's Midtown HQ. Some arrived in person, while a few joined via video conference from other cities. Among them was Carlotta Wu, a seasoned venture capitalist, Jackson Delacroix, an old money financier from Boston, and Rena Mather, a prominent figure in fintech circles. Each wore an expression that ranged from worry to indignation. Leonard began by detailing the suspicious activity discovered in Fulton Street's records. He refrained from discussing his undercover infiltration, focusing instead on the overall findings and the fact that Mary Donovan had forcibly ejected him from the branch. Gasps and murmured outrage rippled through the room. "I have solid evidence," Leonard emphasized, displaying sanitized snippets of the transaction logs. "The amounts being laundered through our bank are staggering. We must take swift action to protect our customers, our reputation, and, frankly, our entire existence as a legal entity." Rena Mather adjusted her glasses. "Have you notified law enforcement?" Leonard nodded. "I have contacts in the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. I plan to share our evidence once we confirm the chain of accountability within our own ranks. Carlotta Wu, typically composed, leaned forward with concern etched on her face. This is horrifying. We must remove Mary Donovan immediately. She has no place in Primefort. Yet Jackson Delacroix raised a hand, eyes narrowed. Hold on. If we show our hand too soon, we risk losing track of the larger network. We need Mary Donovan to lead us to whoever R is. If we tip her off, they'll vanish. A debate ensued, with board members torn between immediate disciplinary action and the strategic benefit of using Mary Donovan as bait. Tensions soared when one board member asked whether Leonard had done enough oversight as CEO, subtly suggesting his inattention allowed this scheme to fester. Leonard felt a stab of indignation but controlled his temper. Our systems are robust, but criminals are crafty. We have auditing processes, yet they were circumvented by high-level privileges and corporate knowledge. We'll strengthen oversight, but right now, the priority is containing the damage and catching those responsible. The debate concluded with a compromise. Mary Donovan would be quietly suspended, pending an investigation. However, her suspension wouldn't be publicly announced until the FBI could coordinate a sting operation. In the meantime, Leonard, Darren, and a select group of executives would continue gathering intel on R and Project Amherst. The board also voted unanimously to support Leonard's approach at least. That's what they claimed. Leonard couldn't shake the feeling that someone in that room might have deeper involvement than they let on. Later that evening, Leonard worked alone in his office, scouring the newly installed keylogger data from Mary Donovan's computer. The software had already recorded a slew of keystrokes, revealing an email drafted to R. In it, Mary admitted that people were snooping around but insisted she had everything under control. The message ended with an ominous line. If Leonard Whitfield continues to meddle, I'll take care of him. Leonard felt a chill reading his own name used so brazenly. He forwarded the keylogger data to Darren and debated whether to confront Mary immediately. In that moment, his phone buzzed again, another text from a blocked number. You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. CEO. Pray you don't lose. Fury and fear collided in Leonard's chest. He typed back a reply. Who are you? What do you want? But no response came. Searching the phone's settings, he found no trace of the number. Moments later, an email pinged in his inbox, this time from a generic address he didn't recognize. The subject read, Project Amherst Critical Update. Inside, the email contained a single sentence, Meet me at the abandoned warehouse on West 54th tonight, or else. A Google Maps link pinpointed the address, a rundown building near the Hudson River. Leonard's instincts screamed danger, but he also sensed an opportunity. Whoever was behind these threats wanted a face-to-face. If he went, he might glean information to dismantle this criminal enterprise. If he didn't, the culprit might disappear or retaliate in another way. He considered calling the police, but something told him the local authorities wouldn't move swiftly without more evidence. FBI involvement was the safer bet, but coordinating them for a stakeout in a matter of hours wasn't practical. After a brief internal debate, he decided to go alone, armed with a concealed recorder and cautious determination. Midnight found Leonard standing outside the dilapidated warehouse. The moonlight revealed crumbling brick walls and broken windows that stared like empty sockets. The wind carried the scent of damp concrete and rotting wood. His heart thudded in his chest as he pushed open the rusted door, each step echoing in the cavernous space. A single overhead light flickered, illuminating a small area in the otherwise pitch-black interior. Leonard advanced cautiously, scanning for signs of movement. Suddenly, a voice behind him. You came alone. Good. He whirled around to see a figure lurking in the shadows, face obscured by a hood. The voice was modulated, deep, and distorted by some device. I was beginning to think you'd bring the cops. Leonard kept his voice steady. I'm here. Now tell me what this is about. A low chuckle. Straight to business, huh? It's about $200 million and counting. Project Amherst. That ring a bell? Leonard clenched his fists. I know enough. That's why I'm here. The hooded figure stepped closer, but not enough for Leonard to see their face. My associates and I have been laundering money through Primefort for quite some time. Mary Donovan was one of our best assets until you started poking your nose in. I'm here to offer you a deal. Turn a blind eye and we'll make sure you're generously compensated. I'm talking about sums that would make even you blink. Leonard felt revulsion coil in his stomach. I didn't build Primefort to become some criminal's piggy bank. You're delusional if you think I'll stand by and let you funnel dirty money. A harsh laugh echoed through the warehouse. That's a shame, Whitfield. We know everything about you, where you live, who your friends are. I hear your mother lives alone in Chicago these days. Wouldn't it be tragic if? Rage exploded in Leonard's veins. Don't you dare threaten my family. The figure raised a gloved hand in a calming gesture. No need to get emotional. It's business. If you refuse, you'll regret it. This can end amicably. Play the game and you'll profit. Resist, and everything you hold dear will be at risk, starting with your reputation, then your finances, and finally your loved ones. Leonard's mind raced. He needed to stall, gather more info. Who are you? This our person Mary emails. Are they you? A pause. You'll never discover our real identities. Trust me on that. The figure then pulled something from a coat pocket, a small USB stick. Here's the final set of instructions for Mary Donovan. Get these to her, or else. She'll know what to do. Leonard let out a brittle laugh. So you trust me with your instructions? You're either desperate or stupid. The figure shrugged. Consider it a test of your loyalty. If the next transaction goes smoothly, we might consider you an ally instead of an adversary. You have one day. Before Leonard could respond, the figure tossed the USB at his feet and vanished into the shadows. Footsteps echoed in the distance, followed by the screech of a side door opening and slamming shut. Then, silence. Leonard bent down to pick up the USB, heart pounding. If he played this right, the drive might provide the final puzzle piece to bring down the entire operation. If he miscalculated, the criminals would retaliate with no mercy. Leonard drove back to his penthouse, mind churning. The USB felt like a ticking time bomb in his jacket pocket. If the instructions were for Mary Donovan, they likely contained details about another massive transaction. Potentially, it was the last piece needed to tie everything back to R, or whomever was orchestrating Project Amherst. But the criminal's threats weighed heavily on him. He thought of his mother in Chicago, his old friends who had supported him, and the entire workforce at Primefort who depended on him to protect their livelihoods. Panic warred with defiance in his chest. Could he risk so many innocent lives by confronting these criminals? Or should he comply, at least long enough to devise a safer plan with law enforcement? Eventually, he decided to contact the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. He had a direct line to Special Agent Maria Wilcox, who specialized in high-level money laundering cases. By dawn, he was explaining the situation to her in a secure video call. He omitted the clandestine warehouse meeting, focusing instead on the USB he had acquired and the evidence of a massive conspiracy within Primefort. Agent Wilcox was clear. Don't give Donovan the instructions. Send us a duplicate. We'll run a forensic analysis. But we also need you to maintain the appearance of compliance. If the criminals sense we're onto them, they'll vanish. Leonard nodded, though a pit formed in his stomach at the subterfuge. Special Agent Wilcox hammered home the point. This is a complex, multinational ring. We can't do a quick arrest, or we'll lose the bigger fish. We want them all, Mary Donovan, her associates, and the kingpin, calling the shots. When the time is right, we'll coordinate a sting. Until then, Mr. Whitfield, you'll need to play along. As soon as the call ended, Leonard felt both relieved and anxious. He was no stranger to high-stakes deals, but never before had he faced criminals willing to threaten personal harm. Still, there was no turning back. He had to see this through, if only to safeguard Primefort and the innocent people counting on him. That same afternoon, Leonard returned to the Fulton Street branch in a more official capacity. Flanked by Darren and a small security detail from the corporate office, he marched through the front doors. Customers and employees alike stared as he approached Mary Donovan's office. The hush in the lobby was palpable. Everyone seemed to sense a confrontation brewing. Mary looked up from her desk, her eyes narrowing. You again? I told you before, Leonard cut her off, voice steely. Miss Donovan, you are hereby suspended pending an internal investigation. Please surrender your keys and company access cards. Mary's face went from flushed to utterly pale. She forced a smirk. Suspended? Under whose authority? Leonard leaned in, dropping his voice. Under my authority as CEO. And I suggest you don't make a scene. Security will escort you out calmly, or you can be removed by force. The choice is yours. A muscle twitched in Mary's jaw. For a moment, Leonard thought she might lash out violently. Instead, she snatched up her purse and stormed to the door, security detail trailing behind her. Before leaving, she turned back. You're making a mistake, she hissed. There are people above you who won't tolerate this. Leonard met her gaze without flinching. I'm well aware. With that, Mary Donovan was gone, leaving a swirl of hushed conversations in her wake. Back in her now vacant office, Leonard rummaged through drawers and cabinets, searching for any overlooked evidence. He found little Mary had apparently been thorough. The biggest breakthrough still lay in the USB drive from the warehouse. The FBI's tech experts would hopefully trace the final link to the ringleader. As the day wore on, Leonard noticed the staff's morale lifting. Word spread that Mary Donovan had been suspended, and many employees seemed relieved. Tasha, the teller who helped with the undercover infiltration, caught him in the hallway. Thank you for doing what's right, Mr. Whitfield. We've all felt something was off for a while. Leonard offered a tight smile. We're not out of the woods yet, Tasha, but hopefully we're on the right track. Suspending Mary Donovan was a small victory, but it came with immediate backlash. That evening, Leonard received multiple calls from anonymous numbers, each hurling threats and vitriol. He had suspected Mary's removal would provoke the criminal network, and he was right. The next morning, the press got wind of the confrontation. Business Insider ran a headline: Primefort Financial CEO denied service at own bank, suspends manager under mysterious circumstances. Other outlets speculated about internal turmoil, fueling rumors that Leonard was losing control of his company. Feeling the heat, Leonard organized a press conference. Standing at a podium bearing the Primefort logo, he calmly addressed the swirling headlines. Recent staffing changes at one of our branches have led to speculation about instability at Primefort Financial. I want to assure our customers and partners that we remain fully operational and committed to our core values of transparency and integrity. We are conducting a thorough internal review and will share more details as appropriate. Reporters shouted questions about embezzlement, bank scandals, and money laundering. Leonard kept his answers vague, emphasizing that an investigation was ongoing and that they had zero tolerance for wrongdoing. Nevertheless, the press could sense there was more beneath the surface. Behind the scenes, Leonard faced pressure from the Primefort board as well. Some members were alarmed at the negative publicity. Others worried about plummeting investor confidence. Stock prices began to wobble, reflecting market jitters about potential scandals. Through it all, Leonard maintained his composure, reminding everyone that the truth would soon exonerate Primefort and expose the guilty parties. But time was not on his side. The criminals behind Project Amherst were likely panicking, and cornered criminals were dangerous criminals. Leonard wondered how long it would be before they attempted a final, desperate move. Finally, the FBI completed its analysis of the USB drive. In a confidential meeting with Leonard, Darren, and Special Agent Wilcox, they revealed damning evidence that directly linked the project instructions to Mary Donovan's email account, complete with instructions from the elusive R. More importantly, they discovered a hidden subroutine that would route funds through multiple shell companies, culminating in a massive final withdrawal from Primefort accounts. This is it, Agent Wilcox announced, tapping a projected image of the coded instructions. They're planning to funnel nearly $50 million in one final sweep before shutting down their operation. If we let them complete the transaction, we can trace the money and freeze all the associated accounts in real time. Leonard inhaled sharply. You want us to let them proceed with a $50 million theft? Wilcox nodded. Yes, but we'll catch them in the act. We'll have a joint task force monitoring the transactions. As soon as it goes through, we lock it all down, effectively following the trail right to the top of this network. Darren exchanged a worried glance with Leonard. The plan was high risk. If something went awry, Primefort stood to lose a fortune and possibly its credibility. Still, it was the cleanest way to ensure the criminals could be prosecuted with indisputable evidence. It would also help the FBI gather intel on the larger syndicate. With a heavy heart, Leonard agreed. All right, we'll coordinate, but I want absolute assurance you'll protect our legitimate customers. Primefort can't become collateral damage. Agent Wilcox assured him the FBI would do everything in its power to safeguard Primefort's interests. The trap was set. They would wait for Mary Donovan or her cohorts to initiate the massive transaction. Once the money started moving, law enforcement would strike. But there was one major snag. Mary Donovan was already suspended. Would she still have the means or opportunity to trigger the final theft? Days passed, and Mary Donovan remained elusive. According to her HR records, she had not responded to any official correspondence regarding her suspension. Her company phone was deactivated, and her personal line went straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, the criminals behind Project Amherst seemed to have gone silent. No further messages to Leonard's phone or email. Tension across Primefort's leadership team soared as they waited in limbo. Then, without warning, Mary Donovan turned up at corporate headquarters one morning, strolling through the lobby as though nothing had happened. A receptionist recognized her immediately and alerted security. Mary, however, walked directly to the main elevator bank, swiping a card to gain access to the executive floors, a card she shouldn't have had anymore. Leonard, who was in a meeting with several department heads, received an urgent call from the front desk. Sir, Mary Donovan is here. She's on her way up. Panic sparked around the conference room. Darren rose swiftly, heading to intercept Mary. Leonard, uncertain whether to call the police first, decided to see what she wanted. The security guards trailed her, but Mary moved with unwavering confidence. By the time she reached the executive suite, half the staff was frozen in confusion. Leonard stepped into the hallway just as Mary appeared. She looked disheveled, makeup smudged, her hair a mess far from her usual immaculate appearance. She ignored the security guards flanking her. I need to speak with you, Mr. Whitfield, she said, her voice a strange mix of desperation and defiance. Alone, against his better judgment, Leonard led her to a nearby private office, motioning for the guards to wait outside. Darren hovered by the door, refusing to leave entirely. Mary clutched a worn leather folder to her chest. I have proof documents that show who is really behind Project Amherst. They're trying to set me up. Leonard eyed her warily. You authorized those transactions, Mary. We have logs, your fingerprints, your signature. Her eyes brimmed with tears. I was coerced, threatened. They have people everywhere high in government, high in the corporate world. R isn't just a single person. It's an entire network. I didn't think I had a choice. Leonard's skepticism battled a flicker of sympathy. Who exactly threatened you? Mary shook her head. I don't know. They communicate through burners-coded emails, but they paid me well to keep my mouth shut and to do what they said. When you started digging, they wanted me to push you out, but now they want me gone too. She slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a trove of documents, bank statements, photos, emails, even flight itineraries connecting various high-profile individuals to foreign nationals under investigation for money laundering. Leonard's eyes widened. If legitimate, this folder was a treasure trove of potential leads for the FBI. Mary placed a trembling hand on Leonard's desk. Help me, and I'll testify against them. Put me in protective custody. I can't run anymore. Leonard studied her face for any sign of deception. She looked genuinely terrified. Meanwhile, Darren hovered near the door, exchanging tense glances with Leonard. Had they finally encountered the break they needed, or was this another trap? With Mary Donovan's new information, Leonard immediately contacted Agent Wilcox. Within an hour, Mary was whisked away to a safe house, guarded by federal agents. During a debriefing, she revealed that Project Amherst was scheduled to finalize that very evening. Another operative within Primefort, someone with admin-level privileges, would execute the $50 million transfer. Mary claimed she didn't know the operative's identity, but believed they had ties to senior-level access in it. Frantically, Leonard convened his top IT managers, scanning employee rosters for any anomalies. A name emerged, Russell Hodges, an unassuming director with a clean record and minimal interaction with the executive team. Checking his logs, the staff discovered suspicious after hours access to PrimeFort.eb, the bank's main database. The sting operation was put into motion. The FBI arranged to have agents stationed at PrimeFort's data center, ready to monitor and intercept the transaction. That night, Leonard paced anxiously in his office, phone in hand, waiting for the call that would confirm the criminals were caught in the act. At exactly 10:37 p.m., Russell Hodges logged into the system, using a set of privileged credentials that circumvented the standard security protocols. The watchers in the FBI's remote operations van held their breath as lines of code scrolled across their monitors, signifying the movement of massive sums. In real time, Leonard observed the transaction on a large overhead screen. A wave of dread and excitement slammed into him as he saw the money begin to move. Then, on a hidden FBI command channel, a burst of chatter erupted. Agent Wilcox shouted, "Initiate the freeze now!" Within seconds, the transaction halted midstream. The agents locked every associated account and seized the funds before they could exit PrimeFort. Simultaneously, a tactical team stormed the data center, apprehending Russell Hodges as he frantically tried to bypass the FBI's lockdown. The net had closed, leaving no escape. Word reached Leonard moments later. The FBI had uncovered multiple accomplices in various positions across different financial institutions, culminating in a sweeping series of arrests. Project Amherst was dismantled. Mary Donovan's testimony, combined with the newly seized data, would help bring down the entire ring, including some high-profile international figures. In the days that followed, a whirlwind of news, headlines, and law enforcement statements confirmed the scope of the operation. PrimeFort's involvement was framed as a victim of infiltration by a sophisticated criminal syndicate, with Leonard Whitfield hailed for his decisive actions in exposing the conspiracy. The bank's stock rebounded, buoyed by public confidence that PrimeFort's leadership had acted ethically under immense pressure. Mary Donovan, now in federal custody, cooperated fully, hoping for a reduced sentence. While her name remained tainted by her direct role in the laundering scheme, her testimony was invaluable. Through her admissions, investigators uncovered the identities of not a single individual, but a group of financiers working under an alias. Their tentacles reached into governments, offshore accounts, and other major banks. In a poignant statement, Leonard told the press, "This ordeal has been a painful reminder that corruption can thrive even where we strive for integrity. But we will never waver in our commitment to honesty and accountability." PrimeFort instituted rigorous new security measures, expanded its internal auditing teams, and pledged to invest heavily in compliance training. In the eyes of many, the bank emerged stronger and more resilient than before. Yet for Leonard, the psychological toll was immense. The threats against his family, the infiltration of his beloved bank, the knowledge that some employees had betrayed him, it all weighed heavily on his heart. Still, he took solace in having honored his personal creed, refused to cower in the face of injustice. The case's biggest twist came a week later. Among the seized assets, investigators found evidence linking one of PrimeFort's own board members, Jackson Delacroix, to Not only had Delacroix known about Project Amherst, but he had been funneling profits to his family's overseas trust funds. His role was to manipulate corporate decisions from within, ensuring the criminals could launder money unnoticed. Learning this, Leonard felt betrayed yet vindicated. Delacroix had been vocal in the board meetings, always urging caution or casting doubt on investigating Mary Donovan too closely. His tactics were designed to stall the inquiry until the criminals could complete their final heist. With the FBI's unmasking of Delacroix as a key conspirator, he faced federal charges for conspiracy, money laundering, and fraud. That was the karmic retribution the story so richly demanded. The man who had tried to sabotage Leonard and PrimeFort now faced a ruined reputation, frozen assets, and a likely prison sentence. Rumors swirled that Delacroix's old money family, once revered in Boston's elite circles, disowned him in a frantic bid to preserve their own prestige. Standing in the boardroom where Delacroix had once lounged in smug arrogance, Leonard felt a sense of closure. Justice, for once, had been served in a sphere where powerful men often escaped unscathed. In the aftermath of the scandal, PrimeFort emerged as a beacon of reform. The bank's leadership doubled down on transparency measures, adopting some of the strictest anti-money laundering protocols in the industry. Customers, impressed by Leonard's hands-on approach to rooting out corruption, returned in droves. Several new businesses, including tech startups and green energy ventures, chose to partner with PrimeFort, citing its genuine dedication to ethical finance. One morning, as Leonard walked through the Fulton Street branch, now under new management, employees greeted him warmly. Gone was the tense, suspicious atmosphere that had once plagued those halls. Tasha Morell approached him with a beaming smile. "Mr. Whitfield, it's so good to see you here." Leonard shook her hand. "Thank you for your help, Tasha. We couldn't have done this without you." She blushed, looking down. "Just doing what I thought was right. I'm thankful to be part of PrimeFort." Reflecting on his journey, Leonard felt a surge of gratitude. He had been denied service at his own bank, threatened, and betrayed by those in positions of power. Yet he had also witnessed acts of loyalty, courage, and decency that reaffirmed his faith in people. Under his leadership, PrimeFort had transcended a brush with darkness to shine even brighter, a testament to resilience and conviction. Outside, the sun glimmered off the bank's glass facade. For the first time in weeks, Leonard exhaled in peace, ready to guide PrimeFort into a future unclouded by corruption, where even the boldest criminals had learned not to underestimate the steely resolve of a man determined to protect what he cherished most. Thank you for joining us on this heart-pounding odyssey through corporate intrigue, hidden betrayals, and ultimate redemption. From the tense moment when our CEO was turned away from his own bank, to the massive undercover sting that exposed a global network, we've witnessed how justice can triumph in the face of overwhelming odds. Leonard Whitfield's unwavering resilience and moral fortitude reflect a lesson we can all carry into our lives. Real change demands courage, focus, and the refusal to back down when doing what's right. We hope this story kept you on the edge of your seat, cheering for justice and savoring each twist. If you enjoyed this tale of suspense and karmic retribution, remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay inspired.